Hitch up the wagons and polish your spurs because it's high noon and the searchers are looking for a way into your network. October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and Infosec is helping to tame the wild, wild net with our collection of free training resources that will make your employees the masters of the cyber frontier and bring cybersecurity to the forefront of your organization. Go to infosecinstitute.com/NCSAM2020 to download our free toolkit containing a stagecoach full of provisions to run month-long security awareness campaign, including posters, infographics, newsletters, email templates, presentations, and more. Grab Cybersecurity Awareness Month by the horns with this wild bunch of free material from our award-winning LX Labs team. Just as the wanted posters in the Wild West help the public recognize the region's most notorious villains, our free training kit reveals the identities of common cyber threats to help prepare your employees for the real attacks they face. Again, go to infosecinstitute.com/NCSAM2020 or click the link in the description to get your free collection of training materials and help spread security awareness. And now, let's begin the show, partner. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week, I sit down with a different industry thought leader, and we discuss the latest cybersecurity trends, how those trends are affecting the work of Infosec professionals, while offering tips for those trying to break in or move up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. Our guest today is George McPherson, host of the Blak Cyber podcast. George has an impressive background in IT and information security, and we're going to talk about his security journey. And we're also going to talk about ways to bring more Black, Indigenous, and people of color professionals into the cybersecurity world. When George McPherson was pulled through the ranks and pinned as a 21-year-old sergeant in the U.S. Army over 20 years ago, he learned two things about himself. He could accomplish anything he put his mind to, and he would always pull others up if he was in a position to do so. George prides himself on integrity, an insane work ethic, attention to detail, and his greatest superpower, outside-the-box creativity. With 25 years in the technology industry, the first 18 in telecom and the last 7 in cybersecurity, George has had the opportunity to work in industries such as the military, telecom, local government, healthcare, and electric utility. George has expertise in incident response, security monitoring, threat analysis, and network security engineering. He's well-versed in direct and remote analysis with strong critical thinking, communication, and people skills. George is able to thrive in a fast-paced and challenging environments where accuracy and efficiency matter. George, thank you for joining us, and welcome to Cyberwork.
Thank you for having me on the show, Chris.
I kind of gave you your background here, but I want to get a sense of your career trajectory up to this point. So, you started out in telecom, you started, in IT, but what sort of got you interested in specifically in cybersecurity? What were some of the steps between this point of your career and then jumping into the security side of things?
Gotcha. Like you said, I spent 18 years in telecom. I still loved what I did, but working outside, climbing under houses, climbing telephone poles, kind of got old, wanted to save my body.
I'm sure, yeah.
And I jumped into IT, kind of went to a IT training program. And to be honest with you, it was, I say I got lucky, but it was a lot of hard work in between. When I got into IT, it was literally January 2013.
Okay.
And I was doing Windows 7 upgrades, re-imaging, and I literally got my first cybersecurity job 10 months later in October 2013. So
wow.
Not this, I know this doesn't happen for most people, and I did expect it to happen for me, just positive thinking. But when it happened, it was like, wow, I really did it. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how has the sort of cybersecurity landscape changed in the 8 years since you started in the field? Can you sort of talk about, the way you did things in 2013 versus the way they're done in 2020? What are some of the changes?
What I would say is mobile devices, existed for years, but people use them more. You can do more on them. So it creates more threats. People, aside from working on the PC, they like to work on their phones more.
Right.
You got the rise in IoT. You have IP on everything. You have IPs on refrigerators, even microwaves.
Yep.
It's just so many things. It's just a lot harder to kind of manage threats these days.
Yeah. The whole threat surface is just so much larger now, and there's
Oh yeah.
so many more places that people can get in. So, you mentioned it a little bit, but once you got in, to the cybersecurity field, it seems like your skill set and area of expertise grew really, really quickly. Like you went in, from 2013 till now, you went from general IT to network engineering to, CSOC analyst and consultant. To the point where you were implementing and monitoring Mecklenburg County's security solutions. So, could you sort of give me a sense of like your learning journey in that regard? Like, what types of learning or study or practice or on the job training helped you to move up the ladder that quickly?
What I'll say is just a thirst for learning.
Mm-hmm.
When I got my first cybersecurity job, um, I wanted to make sure I learned. And in that case, I wanted to learn weak points, but in that case, being green, everything was a weak point.
Right.
So
Yeah.
just learning everything, learning things at work, taking it back home, studying it, doing labs. Labs were key. Studying on my own when I didn't have the pressure to perform at work, when I
Right.
could unpack it and see what was really going on and take that back to work. So what I actually, I credit that always labbing, always learning on your own and identifying your weaknesses.
Mm.
And the other part of that, I always look to mentors. Either I would find a mentor where I worked at on the security group. If I saw somebody that had a high skill level, I would kind of, look at their traits and kind of emulate that and try to work on those traits. And if I didn't have that person, a clear person in that unit, I would just reach out to somebody in the cybersecurity, somebody you see on YouTube that's a thought leader, somebody you just want to follow their footsteps. So
Right.
I think I attribute those two things.
Okay. Were there particular sort of types of things where you're like, oh, this is really interesting, I want to learn this, and then that sort of like pushed you into like a different area? Like, were there like specific security like skills or problem solving things?
What I will say is when I first got started, it was jack of all trades. We were small
Yep.
cybersecurity group, but huge organization, healthcare organization. So we're just learning everything. So it's kind of hard to figure out then what I wanted to do. I was just trying to be good at everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I took a networking job kind of after that cybersecurity job to get my networking skills up. I did that for about a year, and then I jumped back on the cybersecurity side.
Okay.
And I actually took a contract SOC analyst role. And that kind of woke up the blue team side instead of doing just regular operations. Then you start getting into the theory and tracking down hackers and figuring out what's going on and unpacking that. And that's really what kind of that analyst side start coming out, the analytical side.
Yeah, and then from there so it says you sort of installed and monitored the security system for, was it Mecklenburg County? Is that in Virginia? Did it say that was, or?
That's in Charlotte, North Carolina.
North Carolina. Yeah. So tell me about that. Did you sort of like design that system, or what is the sort of scope of Mecklenburg County's security system? Like, what are the things that you're protecting?
Gotcha. I'll give you the high level of that. When I first got to Mecklenburg County, I was kind of hired because I had that background where I could use many tools. So I was kind of hired as a backup to everybody because I knew all the tools.
Mm-hmm.
And I was brought because of my threat skill set. Most people wasn't doing threat. It was kind of a small team, maybe a few people, 3 or 4 people. And a couple months after I started, the firewall guy moved on to another position. So that opened the opportunity where my director tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, we need somebody with a firewall skill set. Would you be willing to do this? So I did that for the first year. And then after that, we hired a firewall engineer, and I was able to refocus on what I originally came for, was the threat side. Mm-hmm. And by that time, we started having conversations around, should we build a SOC? Getting our SIM in place, start putting in the technology, the methodology. And that's when we started building the SOC up, started building the capabilities. And what was funny about it, that team was like a security operations team for as operational daily, just that team. When we started building the SOC out, we started growing a lot. And then we built the identity and access and other security teams.
Okay.
So it's been a good journey.
That's cool. So you're talking about the importance of mentors. Can you give me a piece of advice that a mentor gave you that really stuck with you, or that sort of driven you in this particular career journey?
I definitely have an example of that. Mentor told me to be relentless, be bold. I think that's like, don't take no for an answer.
Right.
Find a way to make it happen. That same mentor, the other thing they told me is, even if you're a person that likes to be technical in cybersecurity, it's never too early to start working on your cybersecurity leadership side.
Okay.
Because
yeah, go ahead.
You don't want to be all technical, and then when the time comes to make that leap, it's such a high leap. So you want to kind of build that in. Yeah.
So what are some advice? Do you have any advice for people who want to make the leap into leadership from, because some people just like to do the problem solving work, and we've had a few people who say they're kind of disappointed that they don't get to do that anymore because now they're sort of leading a team. But what's your advice in that regard?
Can you say that one more time?
Well, I guess I was just saying, like, for some people, it seems like there's a leap between, just doing the cybersecurity work and solving the problems and chasing the bugs and stuff. But then once they go into a management or leadership position, like they kind of lose part of what they liked about it, because now they're just leading other people who get to do the fun stuff. But like, so what is your advice in terms of, not even related to that, but just what is your advice for making the jump into leadership from just being a worker?
Gotcha. What I would say is, in meetings, you may be given an opportunity to kind of your point of view on things. Don't be quiet about it. If you have a good idea, definitely bring that up. That's a strategic side, a leadership side, kind of building that skill set. Another thing you could do, you do your technical duties throughout the day, but you can go to your supervisor and you can ask, is there a small project that I could, spearhead?
Yeah.
That can build that problem solving, what it takes to make something happen. You see the holistic picture, not just the technical side. So that's what I would definitely recommend.
So I'm excited to talk to you about your podcast, Blak Cyber. So what got you interested in hosting your own podcast? And for people who are unfamiliar with it, what's your nutshell description of what the program's about?
Gotcha. What got me interested in the podcast? Ever since I've been in cybersecurity, I've been trying to help others get into cybersecurity. I make posts and articles on LinkedIn to kind of motivate people and help them, and even some technical posts. I was just trying to think of different ways to do that. And I think one day I was on YouTube and I was looking at some of the top podcasts, and I started getting entrenched in it. And it was real interesting just to see people kind of talk things out and unpeel things in a podcast. So came up with an idea for the podcast. The podcast is basically to help all people get into cybersecurity, but it's mainly geared towards African Americans to, cover that diversity side. For new people trying to get into cybersecurity, for mid-level, how do you get to that next level once you're at the mid-level, senior cybersecurity, just to kind of be successful throughout your career. And what I also stress is that you're not just an employee. Some people may look at it different. You have some old school people in cybersecurity may say it's just about the work.
It's just a job. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I my belief is a brand as well. You should treat yourself as a brand, and do things that, that reflect positively on your field.
Yeah. Now, do you sort of start each episode with a topic in mind, or do you get a guest first and then sort of see where it goes? Like, how do you sort of structure your podcast? What do people, what can they expect?
Gotcha. First episode, and I was doing research before I started, and it was like, hey, just start talking.
Yeah.
So first
get the content out there.
Oh yeah. My first episode kind of just told about why I was starting the podcast and how I actually got into it. And after that, I had a few more just kind of reflecting on some things that would help people and motivate them and get them in the industry.
Okay.
And I think about episode 3 or 4, I started incorporating guests and start digging into topics of successful people in cybersecurity that could give good advice and help people get into the industry.
And that leads into my next question. What's your favorite piece of advice you've either given on Blak Cyber or that one of your guests has given listeners on Blak Cyber?
Favorite piece of advice. Stay motivated, and as rewarding as cybersecurity is, that's why I'm pushing people to get into it, because it's a very rewarding field.
Yeah.
Know the flip side. It's a very hard industry as well. It's a very stressful industry. You have to manage that. And when you're initially getting in, you're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to have to not take it personal and just keep going. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. You talk about your sort of insane work ethic and your relentlessness, the importance of relentlessness and so forth. How do you avoid burnout?
I think I avoid burnout by having other interests.
Okay.
I do acting on the side. I do voiceover on the side. I used to do a lot more acting, but when I got more serious about cybersecurity, the time, I mean, voiceover you can do at home, so that's perfect.
Yeah, especially now, everyone's doing voiceover at home, I imagine. Just get good mic and a good internet connection. So I want to talk about the sort of one of the big cornerstones of Blak Cyber. Like, what tips would you have to people of color who are trying to enter the world of cybersecurity, and what are some of the ingrained pitfalls of the industry that you had to learn to sidestep over the years?
Gotcha. What tip I would give them is operate off the 10X rule. Do 10 times more, work super hard. Everybody knows we have a diversity problem.
Yes.
It's like, for whatever reason that might be, that's another conversation. We're unseen. So I'm like, do 10 times more, be creative, find ways to, just be successful in the industry.
To that end, could you do you have any recommendations to give to organizations to make their workplace corporate culture more welcoming to a diverse workplace?
Gotcha. What I would say about that is I would look within, and if you could honestly say that was a diverse environment, I would first look into the marketing. If I go to a website and I'm looking for careers, and I look at that website, and that website is only one type of person, and that person doesn't look like me, subconsciously I may say, I may not be a good fit, or not good fit, or I may not be able to work here. I may not get the job. So
yeah. So I mean, to that point, I think there's a big conversation within the industry and within HR and within people who, there are companies that really do want to recruit more Black people, more women, more minority professionals, but they're not only not able to hire them, but they're sort of not able to make themselves desirable to the professionals they're trying to recruit. So, you hear a lot of excuses like, well, we'd like to hire more inclusively, but we don't get any applications from women or minority candidates. And, this speaks to sort of a problem on the sort of, the sort of job posting side and the HR side. So do you have any sort of thoughts in this regard into where to find, more people of color and so forth?
Gotcha. I got a pretty good idea, and I think I've seen one company doing this, a pretty big company, but I haven't seen it kind of circulated, and it is a good idea. I would recommend to those companies to, zero in on HBCUs that may be in your city.
Yep.
You can go out, talk to them if they have a cybersecurity program. You can go out, talk to them, let them know you're interested. So that kind of piques their interest, puts your company on their radar, lets them know that, okay, that's a big move. You're coming to HBCU and you're talking to us, and you kind of setting up this pipeline. So I think that's a good, quick, easy way to kind of start going in that right direction.
Yeah, and I think there also needs to be sort of a sense of building a bench too, because if you just hire a lot of, African American candidates in sort of entry levels, then it gets hard to figure out how to, move up into, managerial and
Yeah.
CEO and SEO and stuff, or CISO and so forth like that. So, I mean, you really have to kind of build the bench at all levels. And I mean, that's going to require sort of a multi-pronged attack in this regard in terms of like really making a conscious decision, right?
And that's, I definitely want to add to that. It's not about just African Americans. The key word is about diversity.
Yes. Yeah.
When you're trying when you're trying to figure out problems, you need different ways to look at that problem.
Yes.
And you need people from different backgrounds and different ethnic groups, different cultures.
Yep.
So that's where it's like, that's where you should be operating from.
Yeah, and not just men and women and different races, but different people with physical disabilities, or
Exactly.
we're hearing so much about how so many security things that if you're thinking in terms of like, well, everything just works for me, the keyboard and this, that, and the other thing, if you have someone that has where not everything is a default like that, like you have more solutions at hand, you have more things. This foundational thing that I didn't even think about is right there in front of me, but you need a lot of different conversations at the table, and also you need to be listening to all of them.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So not just in terms of hiring more diverse professionals, but I want to sort of also talk about the workplace culture and the way companies can move their workplace towards a more friendly and accommodating space for a diverse workplace. Because like you said, if you look at the staff list and it's all sort of unified race or background or whatever, it's hard if you're the first person to go in of a different background to not feel like it's sort of like us against them or us against the world or whatever. So I think that there can be things that can change within corporate culture. Do you have any thoughts on how to sort of bridge that a little better?
I do have an idea, and I'm not speaking as an expert. Okay. With what I would recommend with certain companies, and it's a buzzword now, diversity and inclusion.
Right.
So most companies have that department.
Yep.
So if you don't have that department, that's your first thing you need to do.
Yeah, it needs to be part of the culture.
Oh yeah, and once you get that in the culture, as a hiring manager, how do you reach out there and collaborate and start brainstorming some initiatives that can create that? They're the experts; they can think out of the box, kind of help you with those issues and close that gap.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, speaking of this is sort of a related thing, and it comes up on our show all the time, but do you have any thoughts on the so-called cybersecurity skill gap or talent shortage? Where do you see that? Do you see that in your own workplace? And do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I do have a couple of thoughts on that. I think it's a couple parts to it. Hiring managers, when you're writing a job description, you have to, and I don't want to offend anybody because hiring managers are very smart at what they do.
And they listen to the show.
And they listen to the show.
Yeah.
But be honest about what you're really looking for in that role. Yes. Don't just throw buzzwords in the job description and say, that sounds nice. And then when you put it out there, you wonder why you're not getting the right feedback. Other thing I would say is, when it comes to job descriptions, don't make them so specific that you close everybody out.
Yep.
Use more ors in a resume than ands.
Okay.
Because if you use a bunch of ands, you're going to disqualify a lot of people out.
Yep.
And to them at first thought, they might say, oh, we eliminate 90% of the people and we got 10%. Oh, that's the best 10%. But is it the best 10%, or is it just 10%? And you left some of your all-stars in the 90%.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You're closing things off. And I mean, let's talk about that a little bit too. Like, what are your thoughts if you're looking for a job in cybersecurity and you see something and you see one of those kind of things where they're looking for a unicorn candidate? Like, what are, obviously, your advice could be to push through, but like, what are your thoughts on, you see something, I might not be qualified for it. What do you go for it anyway?
My rule is, if it looks like a little bit of a stretch is always good. That makes you better. If it looks like a huge stretch, then you
Yeah.
may be wasting your time and the hiring
Yeah.
manager and the recruitment.
Yeah.
You might be wasting everybody's time. So
If you can learn it over a couple of weekends, maybe it's worth it. But if you if you get there and a month later you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about, then that could be a problem for everybody. So we to that end, we've had some mixed messages with regard to hiring practices in cybersecurity. And you were saying that there's too many ands and not enough ors. But what are your thoughts on organizations that emphasize the need for traditional educational credentials like a BA or a BS? Do you think that's even important anymore? Does that say something important, or are you of the opinion that if you can do the work, then you should get in?
I'm of the opinion if you can do the work, you should be able to get in.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I know when you're vetting people, you do have to prove that you have that knowledge, either if it's from a former position, certification, or a degree.
Yep.
I wouldn't hold a whole lot of weight in degrees. There is some capacity where it is important. Maybe the higher leadership positions,
Yep.
it may be important. The important thing I would like to point out is sometimes you have a hiring manager that's all the way on board with that, but there may be a policy, a HR policy that they don't know about that says we only hire someone with a degree.
Right.
So they would almost have to talk to each other and actually be on the same page about who can we hire, what are the stipulations, what rules them out beforehand.
Yeah. And that's what I was just going to come up to is a lot of people in the cybersecurity or the security department say, as long as you have the the background or the cert, it's fine. But we're getting these clashes where HR is the one doing the job descriptions or doing the final vetting. Even the cybersecurity people are writing the job descriptions and saying degree not necessary, but then if they don't see it. So it seems like this is going to be a big problem for the next couple of years of of getting HR on board with what's the security department actually needs. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So obviously the last 6 months or so have completely changed the employment landscape yet again here. So what is in your view, what's the job market like right now in the age of COVID-19? Are companies looking for candidates? Do you have a sense of whether the process has changed for being noticed or getting an interview or starting working on a job these days?
What I'll say about that is I probably get a lot of hits from recruiters all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When COVID, when first people started going home, those first month or two, our organization wasn't hiring.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't seeing a lot of jobs going out. And then I think after about 2 or 3 months, I think people started figuring it out. Like, we can definitely work from home. This may even be a good thing.
Yep.
And then that's where you create, I guess it's a good problem where people have to interview with, I give advice on that you want to practice video interviewing.
Okay.
And luckily we've had a little bit of practice because now we're working from home. Everything is virtual. You learn how to work Zoom and other, video platforms. So that's what I've seen on.
Now, you said you have some advice for sort of practicing like video interviews and stuff like that? Do you have any sort of interview self-coaching tips?
What I'll say on that, I think when I did my SOC analyst contract position, that was fun and different because I never did a video interview. But what I did with that is, I looked online for some study questions, look at the job description, kind of do a mock. I'm all about practice and preparing, kind of do a mock interview, put yourself on the Zoom, see how that feels, go through the questions, drill through the questions. How would you answer? How would you elaborate on those questions? And your dress code. I had my suit on.
There you go.
For the interview. I got the job just off the video interview. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so it is possible then. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yep. We'll all get to meet and shake hands somewhere else down the line here.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of our listeners are just starting to think about careers in cybersecurity. I mean, we've sent out a survey, and a lot of people are saying they have 0 to 4 years in cybersecurity. So I'm always conscious of like pitching this to people who are entry level or pre-entry level, people maybe who are in like help desk or trying to take the next step up. So what tips do you have for newcomers who might feel a little intimidated about where to start their job search in cybersecurity?
I would say, as far as your job search online, is to search smart.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the skills, you need to be using search terms like associate, junior, entry level, to kind of key in on the companies that may be willing to give a chance to somebody that doesn't have that experience.
Yep.
What I would also say is level the playing field. If you're going to be entry level, at least work and get your security plus. It's harder now. They have more real world questions, which is good. But it's not an impossible certification to get first coming into the industry.
Nice. So, as we wrap up today here, if people want to know more about George McPherson or the Blak Cyber podcast, where can they go online to find you?
They can go to my LinkedIn. They can just go to LinkedIn, type in George McPherson and maybe cybersecurity to make it come up if it's other George McPhersons. You can Google the Blak Cyber podcast. And if you Google that, it'll come up. You'll see kind of all the different platforms, Spotify, Apple.
Okay, it's on all the standard podcast places.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, great. Well, George, thank you so much for joining us today. This was really enlightening and a lot of fun.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, and thank you all, as usual, for listening and watching. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find many more on our YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com and type in Cyberwork with Infosec to check out our collection of past tutorials, interviews, and webinars. If you'd rather have us in your ears during your workday, all of our videos are also available as audio podcasts. So just search Cyberwork with Infosec in your podcast catcher of choice. And thank you to everyone who has been rating and reviewing. We hope you will keep doing that. As a reminder, from the top of the show, you saw a little video of me in a cowboy hat. To download our free Wild Wild Net security awareness campaign, including posters, infographics, newsletters, email templates, presentations, and more. To keep your employees safe, go to infosecinstitute.com/NCSAM2020 to go get it all. Thank you once again to George McPherson, and thank you all for watching and listening. We'll speak to you next week.